Hi, my name is Elizabeth Robertson, and this presentation will be covering tribal issues in emergency management. In 2021, approximately 8.75 million people self-identified as or partially as American Indian or Alaska Native. As of 2023, the United States has a government-to-government relationship with 574 federally recognized tribes. This kind of relationship means that the United States and each tribal nation are treated as sovereign nations. Despite tribal nations being on average more vulnerable than the general United States, the Department of Homeland Security grants tribes less than half of what states receive for recovery efforts. Its citizens annually receive, on average, about $26 per person from the federal government, while tribal citizens annually receive about $3 per person. Various issues concerning tribes and emergency management can fall into three main categories. First being tribal sovereignty. More than 200 tribes do not have federal recognition. This then excludes them from receiving federal funding and services. Non-tribal government agencies often have expectations that tribes will handle their emergencies without outside assistance. And then there's historical trust issues among tribes concerning outside agencies, and the lack of understanding of tribal sovereignty within multi-jurisdictional planning programs. Second category is equity. Cultural resources and tribal properties not being included in national priorities of the government. Then there's differences in tribes and situations which call for different needs and risk profiles. The third of the key issues is funding and capacity. 241 out of 574 federally recognized tribal governments had current mitigation plans that were either FEMA approved or approved pending adoption. Now this means that over 2/3 of all tribes in the United States are ineligible to apply for FEMA grants and cannot receive federal funding for disaster projects. There's misconceptions that tribal gaming equates to wealth and less need for external assistance. And then there's difficulty meeting requirements of federal relief funding when they conflict with the timeframes and resources tribes need to apply. Now what has been done? FEMA has created the National Tribal Affairs Advisor, who directly advises the FEMA administrator on all tribal affairs and works to ensure that the agency satisfies the U.S. treaty responsibilities and obligations to all tribal nations. The Bureau of Indian Affairs Office of Emergency Management is responsible for coordinating the Bureau's emergency management efforts internally, acts as a liaison to tribal communities, and increases the Bureau's emergency management capacity. Within the Bureau is the Indian Affairs Emergency Management Council, who prepares other government bureaus to prepare for and respond to emergency activities. And then there's Tribal Assistance Coordination Group, who acts to assist federally recognized tribes during the emergencies and disasters. Regarding policies, there's two main policies: the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act of 1975, which outlines congressional policy on tribal self-determination, enabling tribes to manage certain federal programs with federal funds under contracts which otherwise would have been conducted by federal agencies. And then there's the Sandy Recovery Improvement Act of 2013, which allows federally recognized tribes to request and receive their own Stafford Act declarations and receive FEMA assistance. This means that now the chief executive of a tribe is able to make direct requests to the president instead of appealing to local or state governments. Going forward, there are 7 goals that could be focused on. First, identify and build relationships between tribes, local jurisdictions, and state governments before disaster. Clarify the roles and responsibilities of outside agencies before disaster. Cooperate for the coordination and creation of FEMA-approved disaster mitigation plans. Make informational resources more available, especially in remote and rural areas. Learn from tribes about their resources, customs, practices, spiritual needs, and leadership processes. Understand the differences in recovery between tribal and non-tribal disaster-stricken areas, and ensure that fundraising efforts match the resources needed for daily life, which differ from non-tribal community needs. These are the sources I used as a reference. Thank you for your time and listening to this presentation.